Welcome back to Exotic Car Play Place, everybody. Thanks for coming back. Today's the follow-up to my last week's video about the N54 engine in my 335 that died. It died because it had a water pump failure. There was a bunch of other things going on there. Today I'm going to explain to you, walk you through it step by step. I'm also going to give you some links to some of the things that you need. For example, I found a great video that did a step-by-step. I also found a great link in one of the forums that's going to give you a how-to on some of the other parts. So let's get rolling into this. I'm also going to share with you the parts. I'll give you the part numbers of the thermostat and the water pump and show you some of the specialty tools you're going to need for this job. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with Exotic Car Play Place. And the first thing you're going to need is a good set of jack stands and a good jack. You always want to be double blocked. Never work underneath just jack stands or a jack alone. Very, very dangerous. So regarding some of the specialty tools, well, first of all, you know you have to replace or remove a whole pile of the plastic underneath the car. Well, when you do that, you're going to need something to get it done quickly. And those are all 1/4 inch. It's probably a metric number, but I use the 1/4 inch socket on a nut driver. I use this great little Milwaukee 1/4 inch driver and it works great. It does a very fast job, great job of getting everything removed very quickly. You're also going to need this pick or something like it. You can get these square ones or you can get the ones that are a hook. You're going to need a tool like this because there's going to be a few connections that are going to require you tugging on something, and a flat blade screwdriver makes it very difficult. You're going to need this. Now you may also need a set of Torx female drivers, so sockets, T20 specifically, because I'll show you a few of the places that I ended up having to use the specialty sockets, the Torx sockets. They are very difficult to find, so you may want to search those out before you tackle the job. As well as that, you're going to need a standard set of sockets, ratchets. You're going to need some flat blade screwdrivers, all kinds of different miscellaneous tools that you would normally have in your toolbox. You'll need those as well. Okay, now let's talk about the actual materials you're going to need. So first we have a water pump here. Now I got it from Worldpac. Why? Because I happen to have some connections to Worldpac that can get me wholesale prices. If you go retail, I'll give you an example. There's the box for the thermostat and there's the water pump box. Now when I called the dealer for those parts, combined thermostat and water pump, Canadian dollars, they quoted me almost $1,200. That includes the 3 little bolts that it comes with as well, which coincidentally you will need. They're one-time use only. They're aluminum bolts. You'll need those as well. They'll ask you about it. You definitely will need those. But combined, it was almost $1,200 Canadian dollars to buy these two parts. So I called my friend who has connections with Worldpac, and we ended up getting these parts. The factory original VDO, and I'll show you those here in a second. I'll give you the part numbers. You will need those parts. But I got a deal that yielded essentially a savings of about $600. Combined, I paid about $550 Canadian versus the dealer's quotation of $1,200. I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you the part numbers right now, so let's go look. So this one here is the actual water pump, VDO. It's the VDO brand, which is a must-have by Worldpac. And it is, here's your part number. So now let's take a look at the thermostat over here. I'm going to show you the number on that. Now this one is Mali brand thermostat, of course, right there. And the number for that happens to be right here. So did you get that? Okay, so now you've got the critical components. Now you're ready to tackle the job. We're going to walk you through that in brief. However, the old parts right here. So right here we have the original pump. This one is in very, very rough shape, as you can see. The housing, there was no obvious cracks or splits, but it was quite obviously leaking antifreeze somewhere, coolant, because this is where I got the fault. So there is the old beast. Quite a heavy little monster for what it is. And then we look at the old thermostat. Now the thermostat's where I see I have a problem. You'll notice this is aluminum. This is an aluminum thermostat. Guess what? The new one is actually plastic. That's right. Go figure. BMW putting plastic parts into their cars. The original one is aluminum. The replacement is now plastic. I don't know which is worse or which is better. Either way, I got a plastic thermostat to replace this original aluminum body. So there you go. So now I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I did very at a high level, and then I'm going to explain to you kind of how I did them. And of course, check in the description below, because that's going to have the link again to the video that I found very useful, as well as the link to the forum post that helps you with some of these repairs. So let's go. The hood. So before we actually get to the water pump issue and the cooler and the cooling tank and all that jazz, here we have the oil filter housing. This is a repair I did the same day because I had a bunch of antifreeze that was starting to leak out here, dribble, and it was collecting a bunch of antifreeze down here. You get that white powder. So I found myself having to replace, there's a seal here. Well, this was the easy fix for this particular housing. This is the oil filter here. That was the easy fix because really all you had to do was access 1, 2, and there's a third bolt underneath, kind of right smack dab between the two down below. There's 3 Torx. And again, I mentioned T20 sockets. You will need T20 sockets to undo these. Now, this part you want to remove, but you also have to remove these oil lines here. And you'll notice they're more or less coupled together. They Y together, come underneath. There's a flange that bolts to the underside of this. Do not undo these, but there's a center bolt right between these 2 points from the bottom. You have to get a socket, undo that, drop these lines. Now have lots of rags ready because oil will drop. There will be oil in there coming out of these lines. And there will be oil in this housing once you break the housing free. Now if you're doing the oil change anyway, like I did, you're going to have this off. You're going to pull the oil filter out, let it drain out of the bottom, do all your work there, and then pull this. I would save this for the last. So anyway, I did that, and I was lucky, because that's the only gasket, or there was a rubber O-ring that was a real convoluted shape had to go in there. If you did not do that, and say you had the other gasket, there's another O-ring that is further back and attached to the engine in here. If you had to do that, that was a much bigger job. Why? Because then you had to undo this. You had to pop this, screws, remove that, pull this out. This then pulls forward. Of course, I have the aftermarket cones. You would have to actually remove the air box, which again, that would come out with this. You'd have to get all that out of there. Then you'd have to undo all this jazz. You've got wiring harness there. You'd have to pull all this apart. It's actually quite simple though. I mean, there's some little clips here and there's some wiring, but you've got to pull that back and out of the way so that you can access these bolts and get this cover off. Now that's where all the fun begins, and that's where I'm going to end that, because there is that link that will show you how to change both of these O-rings and do it properly. So that's a great link, again, as I said in that forum. Another thing I did was I changed this. Why? Because initially I thought this was bubbling out all over the place, and it was. There was antifreeze, and as a matter of fact, you can see residual. Now that's old. That's from original. So what I'm going to do is point out to you, I did replace this new and new because I thought this was the issue. But after further research, I found out that this actually wasn't leaking at all. This was overpressuring because of the water pump that was bad below. So this was becoming a problem. Now I did replace this. I did the thermostat. I did the water pump, which are tucked way down in there. You can't even see them. Again, you can only see them from under here once you take everything off. And as I say, I'll walk you through that briefly here in a second. But no, once you get everything repaired, you replace your thermostat, your water pump. If you've replaced this, or you've interrupted at all, or if you've interrupted any of your cooling system, even if you've had to replace a radiator or some other part of that cooling system and you've lost a significant amount of antifreeze, remember that you will have to top it up here, and this here is actually your bleed screw. You're going to have to use that to help bubble the air out of the system. You want to make sure you bleed the system properly. You don't want to introduce any extra air to the system. You'll create further problems if you do. So again, don't forget the bleed screw. Don't forget to have all these parts in your hand, and then you're ready to rock and roll. I'm not going to show you the full deal. Again, there's lots of videos that show how to and do it yourself on the water pump and thermostat, and they're located down in this area, back and behind. Now trust me when I say, that was a horrible job. So first thing you had to do is take all your underbelly pans off the bottom of the car. Of course, jack it up high enough so you can get underneath. Unless you have a lift somewhere, maybe you have a mechanic or a lift that is able to do that for you. Get the pans off the bottom. So oddly enough, after you take all the plastics off the bottom, you have to actually undo the power steering hoses, which that takes about 2 bolts to undo those. They drop down, and then you also have to remove the stabilizer link and you basically have to undo 4 nuts. That drops and just swings out of the way. You don't have to remove it completely. You just have to drop it down and let it hang more or less down below. That then allows you access, or gains you access, to your water pump and thermostat. Then you can start tying into all the hoses and hose clamps. Then you have to start undoing, there's one big electrical connection off your water pump. There's a smaller little electrical connection off your thermostat. Then you have to undo all the hose clamps. Some of them you have to pick and pull. Other ones, they're an actual hose clamp. So there's a variety of different connections there. You've got to get all that undone. And once all that's done and you've got all your hoses and whatnot disconnected and your electrical connections, there's 3 bolts that hold on your pump, your water pump. There's 2 at the bottom. And then there's one that you can't even see from the top, and you really need an angled fitting to get back in there. So that was a bit of a thorn getting that top one there. By the way, never reuse those 3 because they're aluminum and they're a one-use only, so you'll have to buy the kit. Make sure you get 3 new ones, torqued to 8 foot-pounds of torque. Then you've got 2 little bolts that hold your thermostat onto your water pump. You make sure those have to come undone. Then basically your thermostat comes out first. No, your water pump comes out first, then your thermostat, and then the reverse the other way. You have to get your thermostat in first, get it out of the way, and then your water pump goes in. So lots of different sequence of events. It's a nightmare, but you can do it, guys. If I can do it, you can do it. So anyway, got all that put back together, bolted back up, one-use bolts bolted in, put everything back in, connected all the hoses back in, and bolted it up. Did the oil change in between time, did that gasket in between time as well, and it basically topped up the antifreeze. So I ended up using about a jug and a half. I can't remember, it was around there, a jug and a half, close to 2 jugs of antifreeze. And when you bleed the system, by the way, do it on defrost, crank your heat to maximum, and rev it to 2000 RPM. So hold it to 2000 and hold it there for a couple minutes and watch the bubbling and add as needed. I had to add once or twice to get the level to replenish, because then it gives you a low level as it's purging the air. So I did all that work last night, cleaned everything up, put it all away, and now we're going for a road trip. So thank goodness we're back on the road again. Got the 335 and the N54 cruising along again. Sunny day, it's a beautiful thing. Feels so good to be alive. And guys, so if you really want to learn more about the wonderful N54 or my 335i project in general, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see you guys come back on the next one. Hey, and drop a line. I want to hear more about what you guys would like to see with the 335i. So thanks again for stopping by, guys. I really hope to see you in the next one. Catch you then. Bye-bye.